Hey everyone, it's Jonathan. Welcome back to I Heart Movies and Merry Christmas! Today I'm joined once again by Ashleigh, the movie oracle, and we're talking about the 2018 Netflix film The Christmas Chronicles. I'd never seen this movie and had almost no idea what it was about, beyond it being another Santa's Gotta Save Christmas film. But little did I know, it was so much more than that. Ashleigh had it on her list of her most favorite holiday films, so when I asked her to be on my podcast around Christmas, we decided that one would be a good one to discuss. So I had never seen this movie. I'd heard about it, but I had no idea what it was or what it was about. I'm not usually into a whole lot of Santa movies, so it just didn't really
hmm
cross my radar as something like, oh, I gotta see this. So I hadn't seen it until you suggested talking about it. So this was a first for me. So what is it about this movie that stood out to you? Why did you choose it? And you said it was one of your favorite Christmas movies. So what is it that makes it one of your favorites?
It's the first Christmas movie. I should rephrase. It's the first modern Christmas movie that has actually ended up being put on my top 10 Christmas movies list. Basically, forever, I've stuck to watching the same films all the time, and guaranteed I would watch plenty of new Christmas movies, but there was nothing where I felt in those I'm like, yeah, I want to revisit that every single year. Like there was just something about like the Christmas movies of the 90s that had that quality where they were like timeless, where you could just always go back to them.
Hmm.
And maybe Christmas Vacation was in the 80s, well, whichever, but those ones you just know you can revisit them and they still hold up. Like they're not set around a specific time. So you can watch them at any time and you feel like it's still relevant. And then nothing else had really grabbed me. And then in 2018, Christmas Chronicles came out on Netflix, and everybody was talking about it. And I'd seen the clip popping up on Netflix, and I'm just like, well, it looks good. I'll give them that. I'm like, but I didn't understand, like, it obviously wasn't a very good trailer, because looking at it, I'm like, is this a horror movie? Like, this is some weird editing. This Santa looks kind of scary based on the way they had done the editing, so I wasn't quite sure. And everybody was talking about it, and everybody was posting reviews, and that kind of, because I'm a little stubborn, that kind of puts me off. I don't like talking or watching films that everybody's talking about. Like, if I manage to get in just before I saw everybody talking about it, I'm okay. Um, but if it's after the fact, I'm like, nah, not interested. I'll come back to it another time. And so I watched it for the first time last year instead. And I was just like, oh my God, I get what everybody's saying. This film is awesome. Kurt Russell is now one of my new favorite Santas. He is hilarious. I love that he has a really good message about body image issues, and, also trying to promote healthy lifestyle, because we always associate Santa with, the
Hmm.
Christmas cookies and the drinking egg. I'm like, is he eating these cookies at everybody's house? Because no wonder he is on the bigger side. I'm like, we are fattening up Santa. Can we stop? And then, there's this Santa played by Kurt Russell, and he's like, you know, you go to the gym every Thursday, you try to keep yourself in shape, and this is what they put on their things. He's like, I do not look like this. And I love that. I thought that was nice, giving him a different look. It does make a lot of sense that, Santa maybe doesn't look like the way commercials and product placement, want to sell him as. So I like that they changed that and gave him a different look that kind of feels a lot more believable. Like how the fur of his coat and his hat actually looks like it came from an
Hmm.
animal. I'm like, yeah, well, he lives in the North Pole. He probably like shaved the reindeer one day, and he's like, yeah, I can make some pelt out of that. Like, it just kind of makes sense that that's something that he would do. But on top of the fun aspects that we get from Santa. And I like that they really have created a lot of logic to try and explain how Santa can do what he does. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does Santa visit every house in the world in a single night? And they're like, well, he has a sleigh that has the ability to basically portal jump
Mm-hmm.
through the world, and he has the power of hyperspeed where he can teleport and move at extreme speed, and it looks really great. It looks festive too because it's nice, red and sparkly. And I'm like, see, this stuff makes sense. Yes, Santa is magical, and that is why he can do these things. And it's like, oh, there's no chimney, and it's like, that's okay, there's a window. Like, he's not deterred, he's getting in either way.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, the whole film makes me cry. Like, I'm kind of tearing up throughout the film, and then I get to the end of the film and I'm like, and the tears are free falling, because it's also this really beautiful story. It's a sad story at the beginning, this family who Christmas was something that they really celebrated, was them as a family, and they don't really feel like a family anymore because they've lost their patriarch, who was he was like the one who brought the spirit of Christmas to life.
Mm-hmm.
And without him, they just don't have that anymore. And they've kind of lost their way. And Santa gets basically this letter, like a final plea of like, just please help me. I don't know where else to turn. And Santa, being the amazing saint that he is, unofficially, he's like, well, I can't ignore this letter. And so he creates this whole ruse, where the whole thing is staged. Like, you think, oh man, they all really caught and screwed up Santa, and it's like, you really think no kid has ever tried to do this before? Like, no, he let himself get caught, and he created this whole thing, and it was for the purpose of
I did
helping
not
to.
even catch that. That makes so much
Really?
sense. I mean, I by the end I figured out that he had done everything on purpose, but I didn't connect the dots between his letter, Teddy's letter. That makes so much sense. Oh my word! I can't believe I didn't catch that. Oh wow!
I mean, yeah, he's getting everybody's letters and their messages, and he's seeing that this is a family that's really lost its Christmas spirit. And obviously, he's all about keeping up Christmas spirit. I love that
Yeah.
little reference. He's like, you don't want to see what happens if I don't make my deliveries. And they're like, why? How bad does it get? And he's like, you heard of the Dark Ages? They're like, wait, that was because you missed Christmas? And he's like, it wasn't pretty. I like that his message about Christmas cheer, it's nothing religious or anything like that. It's just about kind of that hope, and I don't have the words right because I was probably too busy crying at the time. But where he's like, Christmas spirit allows people to imagine or try to be better than they are, and picture that they can be better, and that kind of things can be better. And it's kind of like that one time of year where we just achieve to be nicer people. And I like that that's kind of what he's trying to do. And he's kind of seeing this family, and it's a family of true believers. Oh,
Mhm.
like, they get their own little book that is like so cool. And they're like, oh no, this one's kind of lost his way, and him just trying to do his part in helping that. And I really love that. And he has such a fun time with it. Like, even by the end of it, like the fact that Mrs. Claus is Goldie Hawn, like, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is the best casting ever. Like, I nearly died. I'm like, oh my God, his actual wife is playing his wife. And
Yeah.
it's Goldie Hawn. Like, I was fangirling. And so when they're like, we're doing a sequel, I'm like, I can Russell and Goldie Hawn. Yay! Yeah, but I think outside of the magic, it's not that he's trying to make people believe in him, because he's standing right there and he could very easily just, teleport and be like, see, ta-da, I'm Santa. Um, but he wants people to have that faith, that comes, like he says to Teddy, he's like, you've got to believe. And he's like, I do believe. I see you right here. He's like, no, 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 no. He's like, well, believe in yourself for starters, but faith is something that comes without proof. And he wants people to have that because that's that kind of purity where everything becomes really good and happy. And he just seems to like want everyone to be happy, and he like feels really bad for people when they've like turned down a dark path, and he's like, oh, and you became a criminal. Such a shame. He's like, someone's getting coal for Christmas. I think he gets a kick out of giving some people coal.
That's the
But
impression I got.
yeah. Yeah, but I think it's the family story, this family who is going through real grief,
Mm-hmm.
and it's their first Christmas without someone that they love. And I think that a lot of people understand that. It's like, how do you celebrate Christmas when somebody who was a part of making it a happy occasion is no longer there?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love that by the end of it, the mum, she's so emotional and overwhelmed when all the decorations are up, because it's like her husband is kind of there just by those decorations being there. And that's all she wanted. She just wanted her family to feel happy again, and
Mm-hmm.
like love seeing her that emotional. And then like when the son, like the whole time it's like, what did he want to say to his dad? And it's like he just wanted to tell his dad that he was proud of him like, oh my god, this film's gonna be the death of me because it's just so sweet. Plus they I feel like they revamp Santa's mythology. We're so used to all the same things,
Mm-hmm.
the North Pole and the presents and the sleigh. So the fact that everything gets a little bit of a twist
Yeah.
to it makes it all feel really new and exciting, and it's not the same Santa story that we've seen over and over and over again. Santa and his wife are fit, so they're encouraging children to don't eat all those cookies at Christmas time. And the elves are freaking adorable. They're tiny little creatures that speak Elvish, and that one elf with the chainsaw, he's awesome. I appreciate that, and of course, Santa can speak Elvish. Why would he not be able to? He can speak every language. But the fact that they went, yeah, we're not just making them little people, they're little creatures, and they're really cute, and they're really fast. And then every single aspect to Santa is magical. Like his sack is like a portal to where all the toys, all the
Mm-hmm.
presents are kept. And I just love that. Like even at the last minute when Santa's on the clock, and it's like, we're running out of time and we got to get this done. It's like, we need reinforcements, and all the elves come to help deliver the presents. Like, I love that. Like, I just love that sense of, he is Santa, but it doesn't mean that he has to do everything. He acknowledges that there's a team behind him. He has the
Mm-hmm.
help of his wife. She's much a part of it, even if, she's not around till the end. The fact that she gets mentioned, like twice before that, first when he loses his hat, intentionally. And he's like, the wife is always telling me I should bring a spare. She's she's gonna love this. And then by the end, when the elves break him out, and the elves are even saying, Mrs. Claus told you to take a spare. He's like, I know. Like, even the elves are making fun of him. I'm like, I love this. They're like so used to this married couple banter, like they're in on it. Like, I think those little things make it so magical and real,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think we've had something like that in a very long time.
I think I would agree. And I think the fact that I ended up really liking this speaks to how good it was, because like I'm not really a fan of Santa movies. Like I never grew up believing in Santa. Santa was just this thing that other people believed in, and I thought it was kind of weird that people believed in Santa. So I was never
Aw.
like, the only Santa movie that I remember watching and loving, I don't know if this is the title or not. I think it's called Mrs. Claus. It had Angela Lansbury in it when she played
Okay.
Mrs. Claus. I remember watching that and loving that movie. But other than that,
Mm,
there weren't really Santa movies that I loved. So the
fair
fact that I
enough.
ended up really enjoying this one, I think, speaks to its quality.
Well, obviously, this is the first one to really sell you. So I'm going to ask you, so what is it about this Santa that makes you like it when all the others didn't work for you?
Um, Probably Kurt Russell. He was great. um,
Yes.
the story with the kids, that helped a lot. giving
Mhm.
you like an emotional connection, like a thing to follow along with, and it's not just Santa doing Santa things. The
Mhm.
story was really well done, well written, and felt realistic. It didn't feel corny. Like a lot of times with
Mm.
this kind of movie, you get like corny kids doing it's like people writing for kids and they don't know how kids talk. These felt like real kids. Once in a while there would be a line that was like, really? And the
Yeah.
very rarely would there would be like a how do you do fellow kids sort of thing. The one thing that stands out is not a kid's moment, but like there was one
Right.
point where the elves started flossing and I was like, really? Really? The elves are floss dancing? Okay.
Oh yeah. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was hilarious.
I just kind
Like,
of rolled
you
my
go, little
eyes.
elves. I feel like that makes sense for them because, they're in the North Pole. They don't really get to leave much. So they're probably just used to watching, like, on Santa's monitors, like, what's going on in the rest of the world.
That
And
makes sense.
they seem like little creatures who, like, cling to anything that's new and exciting because they just seem like they have these very excited personalities. So I
Hmm.
bet it's like, oh, look, everybody's doing this. Like, yeah, we're going to try and do this too. And then it's like, look, we do it. We can do it too. So, like we have them doing that. We have, the one who's obsessed with the candy canes and he's just like, I'm sorry, Santa, I can't help it. I love candy canes. And I'm like, I know how you feel, buddy. Yeah, everybody's just obsessed with I like that they all have a different look. Like they're obviously the same species, but
Hmm.
each one looks unique. So, and then they each seem to have a unique personality, but then they work together really well. And it's totally different. We're so used to elves being cast as, little people or children playing elves. And it's very rare that they're like, yeah, well, what if we just made elves a completely different species? I'm like, I can work with that. They almost kind of remind me of like Furbies.
When I saw them, I was like, these are like chinchilla rabbit aliens.
Chinchilla rabbits. But they're cute. I mean, there's something about them, even though they're they're animals more so. We have these little chocolates that come out, especially around Christmas time. I don't know if you guys have them here, but we do. And they're called Magic Elves. And basically, they're just chocolates and they're shaped like an elf. And then, but they have like popping candy inside. So that's meant to
Hmm.
be like the magical part. But that aside from the fact that they taste delicious, it's just chocolate and pop rocks. But anyway, on the front, it would be like a different elf. There'd be like a red one and a yellow and a green and a blue, but they'd all be like in different poses. So you can tell they're different elves. And on the back of the wrapping, it would tell you this elf's name is so and so, and this is what he does at Santa's workshop. And did it. And I'm like, I love these chocolates, not because of the chocolate, but because of the elf story attached to it. Like, this is how you sell me. This is how you sell me. And for some reason, these little elves in the Christmas Chronicles reminded me of these little chocolates. Like, they don't look anything alike, but for some reason, their personalities made me think of that so much. And I'm just like, yeah, this just feels like Christmas. I'm like, and I want more elves. I'm hoping to see more of those elves. I want to see Lars and Gord or whatever his name is. I want to see more of them in the sequel.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect with the elves because I don't think I'd seen a trailer or anything. I'd seen people talking about it online. I remember
Mm-hmm.
a comment about creepy CGI elf creatures, and I was like, what are they going to do with the elves? And I didn't know what I was supposed to be expecting. It wasn't that. I don't know what. Apparently, whatever I read, the person did not care for the elves, but they were a lot better than I was
Apparently.
expecting them to be.
Well, that's good. Your expectations were low, so
That does
you
help.
ended up.
That helps with a lot
It
of things.
it does indeed. I don't read or watch reviews for anything that I haven't already watched myself because I
I
don't.
think this was on Twitter. I wasn't like seeking out a review. I think it was just Twitter
Oh,
people.
No, I know. I try to, even if I see people like talking about a film, like if it's one that I haven't seen yet, if I just see the words of the title of the film, I'll try to keep scrolling because I
Mm,
don't want to know anything. But I had not seen or knew anything about the elves. So I'm like, I didn't expect there to be elves in this film just because it looked like Santa's in the city. So we're not at the North Pole. So I didn't
hmm
expect any elves. So then when they did show up, and then they showed up not looking at all like I expected. I'm like, I love this. I like when something doesn't do the same thing we've seen done a million different times. And it's like, well, how many ways can you depict Santa and elves? It's like, apparently there are still ways to change it. And here's another one.
hmm
And I love that. I love that we keep a lot of the traditional aspects of Santa, but we do change it up a little bit. And I think that this depiction just feels a little bit more realistic. Everything about him, it doesn't, like his outfit actually feels like clothes that you would probably
hmm
wear if you, lived in a different part of the world. Like almost if you lived, more up north, getting into the colder climates, like maybe in like Switzerland or Norway or something like that, where it's definitely going to be cold at winter time. And it's
hmm
like, yeah, he looks like he lives in a cold climate, and it works because everything about him, even his sleigh, isn't really that ridiculous. It kind of almost looks like a speedboat that got turned into a sled so that you could like take it out of the water and pull it along the ice.
hmm
Like just everything has a realistic look to it.
I
So you could
I think that's
picture it.
one thing that I liked, especially like at the beginning. Everything felt really grounded, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like the further you get into the movie, the more you realize how much magic there is behind things. But
Mm-hmm.
especially at the beginning, it felt a lot more grounded and realistic, and I think that helped the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like that they gave Santa superpowers in a way that it just makes him more magical because we've always kind of seen, for those of us who believed in him when we were children, you kind of just grow up thinking of Santa as this like really magical person, like Santa can do anything.
hmm
And yet there aren't really a lot of films that show us that much. Like if I go and look at like the Santa Claus films, and I do mean the Santa Claus films as in the Santa Claus trilogy with Tim Allen, um they made Santa look traditionally like Santa. Like when you become Santa Claus, you magically, your hair will turn white and you will get extremely overweight overnight. And it's just like, but why? Like, yes, plus size people exist, it's real, but there are reasons for us all in the real world being the weights we are. Why does Santa have to magically be overweight? That is a very strange thing to depict. It's
That
like,
is
yep,
true. I
no,
never
no,
thought
we
about
don't.
that.
It's like we don't do skinny Santas. It's like, okay, cool, cool. We just like, there's that, that scene. It's always been used in the trailer when he goes to his doctor and he's on the, gym and everything like
hmm
that. And, he's like, so you gained a little weight. And he's like grabbing his tummy. He's like, does this look like a little weight to you? And it's like, well, yeah, no, because that was like in a day. That's very strange. And then suddenly Santa develops a sweet tooth. He loves everything that's sweet and high in calories. And I'm like, what? What, really? He couldn't stick to his like the Calvin before he becomes Santa. He's lactose intolerant. Becoming Santa has cured him of his lactose intolerancy. I'm like, why? Why can't we have a lactose intolerant Santa? Who was the person who decided Santa likes he likes milk? Maybe he doesn't. Has that occurred to anybody? Has anybody actually sat him down and go, what are your diet preferences, please, Santa? So I kind of like the idea that this version of Santa, like he has a life outside of being Santa Claus for
Hmm.
Christmas, where he's just like, yeah, and every other day of the year, I'm hanging out with my wife. I hang out with the elves. I'm a master toy maker, so I'm really good at putting stuff together. I don't need magical powers for that one. And I also like to go to the gym. I like to watch movies. Like, I love that little bit. And she's like, let's watch a movie. Should we watch It's a Wonderful Life or The Grinch? Like, they like Christmas movies. I'm like, I just like
Hmm.
the fact that they like movies. Like, they're just a really cute couple who it's like,
Yeah.
what do we do? And it's a nice night. We watch some movies. Everything just feels realistic. Like, he makes sense in the real world. And I think for a lot of children who, in this day and age where I feel like the Christmas spirit is kind of dying, I feel like these movies would kind of maybe reinvigorate kind of children to believe in Santa. Um, I'm all for children believing in Santa. I don't like, my aunt was someone who made sure that her daughter never believed in Santa because she didn't want to put in all the work for Christmas. That's actually what she said. So she wasn't going to let her child believe it. I'm like, oh my God, you're evil. Like, why would you deprive your child of this fun little belief that costs nothing, really? Believing in something is free.
That is
And
kind of
it wouldn't
weird.
have just, yeah,
My
that was all to save herself a buck.
my I mean, my parents didn't tell us that Santa was real, but they still wrote like from Santa on the presents. Like they still did, like we sort of pretended, but like we
Mm.
didn't believe, but we just kind of, it was a thing that we pretended. I don't know.
Yeah, but see, that's the sweet part. That's just something that you do, and it's sweet, because it's kind of that thought of you wanting your children to believe in something that's nice and magical. And obviously, my aunt was not that. She's like, nope, too expensive. No, 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 no.
It doesn't even have to be expensive. Like it wasn't expensive for mom to write from Santa on the presents.
I know, right? But yeah, that's why I get a little annoyed with my sister when it's been like Christmas Day and we're at her house and may like the sometimes the kids won't have opened the presents so that we can put our presents under the tree as well. And I get really, really frustrated when we're handing out presents and my sister will say who the present came from. And I'm like, no, it came from Santa. And she's like, sorry. Like, she'll give them one and she's like, oh, this is from Bibi. That's what my nieces call me because it's the Indonesian word for aunt, and it's a long story on that one. They're not Indonesian, by the way, but they call me Bibi. And so she'll come around and she's like, this one's from Bibi. I'm like, no, it's from Santa. And she's like, sorry. And then she has the next one. This one's from Auntie Ashleigh. I'm like, for frick's sake, just because you use a different name, it's the same things. Just say Santa. The presents came from Santa, okay? It is not rocket science. Because my nieces do believe in Santa and they believe this. I don't know when this began, but the elf on the shelf thing, little Buddy the elf,
Mhm.
and he watches children, make sure you've been good, and then he reports to Santa. Like, they keep up that facade and the kids totally love it, and they talk about, they find Buddy in random places, like he moves at night. Like, good on you for keeping that up. But then Christmas Day comes along, it's like, you'll forget about Santa. And they're just like, and this is from your dad, and this is from your grandma, and this is from your uncle, and this is from your aunt. I'm like, really? Was it so hard to give credit to a fictional being?
It
I
seems
mean,
kind of weird that she would put so much effort into making them believe in that elf and then not like I don't know that I would want to tell my kids that, like, I would still like talk about Santa. I don't know that I would want them to really believe in him, but I would much rather they believe in Santa than the elf. The elf has
I
always
like
seemed
that.
weird to me.
Yeah, the elf kind of creeps me out, especially when my nieces tell me about him. And like, because their dad puts him in really creepy places. Like they said they walked in one day and Buddy was in the bathroom, and I'm like, why the frick are you putting this elf in the bathroom? What are you trying to say? He's spying on the children in the shower, on the toilet? Does Buddy the elf think that children go into the bathroom to tell their secrets for Santa? Like, what? And they're just like, yeah, Buddy's being naughty. I'm like, well, that seems a bit counterintuitive considering he's meant to be reporting on whether you're good or not. Why
Yeah,
is he acting up?
that's a
But
good point.
they go to so much effort, and obviously their dad has a little bit too much fun moving Buddy around because I think he gets a kick out of like confusing the kids. Like he seems to love confusing and ticking off his daughters. But I love hearing my nieces tell me about it, and they say, yeah, I've been really good, and Buddy is going to go and tell Santa that I've been really good. I'm like, but have you been good? And they said, yeah. I'm like, yeah, sure you have. They said, yeah, and I helped Mom, and I've made breakfast. And I'm like, wait, you make breakfast? Like, you're 7.
Well, let's go through the movie and talk about the different scenes because there's different things that I wanted to talk about throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm now kind of recontextualizing a few things in my head. So I might talk about that when we get there too. Because
You're welcome.
for the first half, well, for most of the movie, I was wondering why it seemed like there were inconsistencies with what Santa was able to do. And I kept telling myself, it's just a fantasy. Don't overthink things. But then by the end, there's kind of a revelation like he was doing this all on purpose. So, and now with you talking about the letter triggering that makes so much sense. I like the movie even more now that I realize that because it recontextualized the entire thing. Like he came there on purpose and he let them catch him. That was the part that I did not put together. I put together by the end that he was doing this stuff on purpose, but I didn't get that he let them catch him on purpose. So I really like that now.
I mean, once you see how he is, and he's super fast, he knows everything,
Yes.
and and if somebody sees him, it's because he lets them see him. But he can instantly get away lickety split. I don't think Santa is going to be caught with all his talents by a tripwire or anything like that, or even like, look, we put powder on the ground so we can see his footprints. It's like, yeah, this ain't his first rodeo.
Yes, that was what was going to be a criticism when I talked about the movie. Like I had all this written down, like there's inconsistencies here with how his powers work. But now that I know he was doing it on purpose, the inconsistencies make perfect sense and they're not inconsistencies.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I guess it is kind of subtle. We only get 2 kind of mentions of it at the end, like one when he gives his hat to Teddy and he's like, but wait, don't you need it? He's like, I don't need it, I'm Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically that moment where you're like, oh, he never needed the hat, he just always had magical powers to move around. It's like, cool. It's like, you sneaky Santa, you. Then when he's at home and Mrs. Claus is like, were you being naughty tonight? He's like, well, yeah, but it was for a nice reason. So, basically he's admitting like he kind of set the whole thing up. Probably not to the degree that some moments got a little out of hand, but knowing what he can do, he could have easily gotten himself out of any of those situations. It's just he let them play out because they're all in relation to somebody who kind of needed to figure something out for themselves. Like with the police officer, it's not that he needed to like hit him over the head with, I'm Santa. It's like, no, that's kind of something you need to decide on your own. He's like, I can't choose that for you. And the girl at the waitress in the restaurant, like all he had to do was say a few things and she didn't really even question it after that. She like immediately believed this guy is Santa. And so she's just like, bye Santa, good luck. Like she's just so happy. And that way I like when she throws out the ice to slip up the butt and she's like, yep, watch yourself. Like I'm like, yeah, that's right, you protect Santa. Santa's cool. I like that little stuff. So I kind of like this idea that Santa is so determined to kind of save people from going down that kind of a path and kind of save a person's like joy and Christmas spirit and the things that are going to make them happy, because he knows that it's a slippery slope that once that happens, you're never getting it back. So he's like, well, this is my job. This is what I do. And if somebody needs this is what I'll do too. And I really love that idea because it really does embody that Santa's not just this invisible entity, that he really does genuinely care and have a passion, and this comes from not like an obligation, but it comes from like a genuine place of he's just a good person who wants to do good things and see people happy. Whereas in certain other films it feels like it's his obligation, whereas this one it feels more like, no, this wasn't chosen for me, I chose this life. And I like that a lot more. It's a better message, I think.
Yeah. Well, you said when you were talking about why you liked the movie, you talked about how it felt kind of timeless. And I'm wondering if part of that is, maybe this is dumb, but the video camera, it is sort of like retro. Even though this is like modern day, this video camera is from like 20 years before, and it plays a pretty big part in the movie. And it, for me, it did kind of help give it sort of a timeless feel, because you have like a modern time, but you're using retro technology. And I don't know, it was just a little touch that I liked, because like you start out the movie, it seems like it's flashbacks, but it's actually they're watching this video of their dad every Christmas doing all the different Christmassy things, and their lives progressing together until you get to modern day and you realize the dad has passed away at some point in the previous year. So I don't know, I really like the touch with the video camera kind of tying things together.
I agree. I think the fact that the camera kind of becomes a character in itself. It's not just like, oh, they're filming this. It's, as Kate says, she's kind of protective of it because it was her dad's, and it's an extension of him, and it's kind of her way, or the family's way, of keeping his spirit alive, because he was the one who documented their Christmases. And I think it was a really subtle but very effective way of addressing how the fact that the dad has passed away without making it this big deal, but still making that grief feel very prevalent, where it was just like, it's the young girl and, you know, she's watching all these old things, and then she has to say that simple line of, I miss you, Dad. It's enough to fill it in and say, he's not there anymore. This is going to be their first Christmas without him. And so the fact that she treasures that camera so much because it is an extension of him, and so the fact that she's using it and she's documenting this amazing Christmas experience, which is probably what her dad would have done, I think that was a beautiful little thing, because it's not just like, you know, it could have easily been a kid pulling out the phone and all that stuff, in which case it probably would have accidentally been live to, you know, stream to like Instagram or Snapchat or something like that. Whereas it wasn't that. It's not that they wanted to broadcast it. It was documenting a Christmas memory. And it's very crucial to them and their family. And it kind of made sense to also use something that traditionally it's like, nope, this is what we use, because it's their Christmas traditions. Like, no, we don't use the new technology for this. This is what we do. We have tangible copies. I like that. I like that so much, because it's easy also to hold on to those things. It's like, look, I recorded this on my phone. Yeah, that stuff's either getting deleted or wiped at some point. But a good old-fashioned videotape, that's staying there for a long time.
It also helped it not feel like it was trying too hard to be hip and modern, because that's another thing that helped it feel timeless that I didn't even think about till just now. If they had used a phone, that would have been another thing where it just felt like, oh, hello, fellow kids. Just like, hey, look, we're making a vlog.
Yeah, I'm sure there were probably some people who were watching this, some young folks, and they're watching, and they're like, what is that? What is that she is using? Because they've never come across a video camera. But I like the way that it was used and the way it was given a story. You know, sometimes you watch a film and like somebody is using something, but they don't explain like why they decided to use that when it's something so specific. And in this, there's a very clear reason. So you don't question it. Even if it's old, you just accept it because you understand that there's a sentimental value to it, which I think just makes everything great. I think that everything else that kind of happens in the film, nothing is kind of set to look like a specific time. I mean, maybe that car that they stole is a little bit on the modern side, but cars trends come and go, but that's
Hmm.
really about it. Everything else was more like human to human interactions and in nondescript places.
Yeah.
So they can move and fit in any time, in any setting, because it's just about people and talking and interacting and yeah, well, nobody's going to go and look at the reindeer and go, no, 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 those are 1980s reindeer in a 2018 film. That does not make sense. Everything else is fine. And you can't say that even about Santa's sleigh. It's like, it's Santa's sleigh. Like, Santa's sleigh is Santa's sleigh, and it works in any place and period, whatever it looks like. Even if it was the traditional sleigh,
Hmm.
that still would have been fine as well, because we just accept that, yep, this is what Santa uses. So
I like the design of the sleigh. It was sort of retro and cool, and not in a way that you would expect. It felt like, I think you said it seemed kind of like a speedboat, but it felt like
yeah,
something older like that, just given a twist instead of just being like a sleigh
well, a bit
or
more of an old-fashioned speedboat, like
yeah, or like
1970s
other
speedboat.
other Santa movies I've seen. They try and give him like a rocket ship or something, and then that feels like too modern. I don't know. I liked the twist that they put on there.
Well, they did kind of give him that, but again, that I liked, where it's like, this sleigh is built for all occasions, and in case of an emergency, we have a backup system.
Hmm.
Should the reindeer come loose or whatever, it's like, cool, this thing can turn into something else where it can be like controlled manually. And I
Hmm.
kind of like that. He's a toy maker and he's got elves that help him build everything. So, yeah, he can kind of do that. And we can see he's got controls that look very flashy, but for me, they don't look modern or scientific. For me, they just look very magical. And so, therefore, I don't put them to a time because of that magical feel, because you be like, oh, yeah, I could see him using all this in the 1600s, as weird as that is. But it's because it's
Hmm.
not based in reality. And I kind of feel like something happened to Santa once upon a time, and he crashed the sleigh, and he had to think, okay, I'm going to have to refit this for future traveling in case this happens again. And so I've got a backup plan. Like,
Maybe
I
this is
feel
what
like
caused the
that's
Dark Ages.
he crashed his sleigh. That could very well be it. See, there you go. Everything's connected. So I kind of like that, even though we see it like quickly become this kind of this self-flying thing that can be manually piloted. I like that it's not like it was just like this already. No, this is the emergency system. This is
Hmm.
the fail safe for when something goes wrong. It makes a lot of sense. And there's just a lot of context into it. And so, like, you could, like you just did, very easily say, well, maybe that's because something went wrong in the Dark Ages. And he went, okay, now we need a backup plan just in case this happens again.
Hmm.
I can't go through that again. Um, Everything that, like, all the choices seem like very logical choices. So everything has a purpose and it fits in. So you don't question it. Instead, you just like, I see why you did that. Yep, that makes sense. I like it.
Hmm.
I like it.
Well, aside from Santa, we have the main family, which is the other reason that I think the movie works so well. At the beginning, you realize the dad has died and they've kind of become dysfunctional. And I liked how realistic the dysfunctionality felt.
Mm.
Because at times, like, I kind of hated Teddy, just the things that he'd do to his sister. And at first, I was like, why would they write him that way? It's like, you want him to be likable, but then I was thinking like, well, sometimes teenagers are really awful to their little siblings, and that feels realistic.
Mm.
And I don't know, the I hated him, but at the same time I appreciated that they kind of made you hate him, and it kind of makes his redemption better because he's legitimately becoming a better person from what he was at the beginning of the movie. Because like he's out there stealing cars too, so he's kind of become a bad kid.
What I like about that is, again, the context. is because if I look at something like Home Alone, and all of Kevin's older siblings were real jerks to him.
Yes.
Like, they're all nasty, especially Buzz being the worst, Buzz being an absolute bully
Mm-hmm.
and him often getting away with it. And in that film, there's no reason for it. It's like, why can't they just be nice to this dude? Like, Kevin hasn't really said or done anything, and they're just by default evil to him. It doesn't make any sense. Whereas in this film, we've seen these children growing up thanks to this little montage of all these Christmases
Mm-hmm.
gone by. And you see that from the moment like his little sister was born, he really did love her. And anytime they had a squabble, dad was right there to be like, no, 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 hug it out. And you could see also that he really admired and idolized his dad. And you can understand that now his dad, the person he admired more than anything in the world, isn't there anymore. And you can understand that grief makes you do dumb things that you otherwise wouldn't do. So he's
Mm-hmm.
just in a bad place because he's trying to comprehend a world without his idol in it, and he's trying to deal with his own things, and he's just not dealing with them in a healthy way, which speaks for any person who goes through grief. I think most people
Mm-hmm.
don't deal with grief in a healthy way. I don't really think there is a healthy way to deal with grief. It's grief. It's going to suck either way. But
Mm-hmm.
you have that sympathy for him, and you don't necessarily hate him right away because you kind of get it. You're like, yeah, this kid's having a hard time. And I think it's clear that the mum, she looks so tired and so drained, and that is also realistic. It's like now
Mm-hmm.
she has to balance how to grieve the death of her husband, how to be a single parent, how to make sure that her children are provided for, that the house is okay, and take care of all those things. And she looks like it's gotten to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that moment when the kids are squabbling and she comes home and she kind of looks like she's just about fed up with it. And Kate, she's just ready to totally dob him in. And the mum's face, she's like, what has he done now? Where it's almost like she's going to cry because she just can't take one more thing. And the kid, she reads that instantly. She's like, I can't do this. I can't say that because maybe it'll get him in trouble, but it's going to hurt her mom in the process. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she's like,
That scene makes so much more sense to me. When I watched that scene, I was like, what little kid wouldn't take this opportunity to just totally rat out their sibling for a legitimately bad thing that he did? But now that you say that, I get it. I get why she wouldn't want to, because it was going to hurt the mom more than it was going to hurt her annoying, bad behaving older brother.
I think the performances really gave those moments that context, and I felt they were very solid performances because, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, she looks worn down, and when she hears her son has done something
Yeah.
again that's really bad, she just looks like she's at the end of her rope. And even though she's like demanding, what did he do, that look on her face is like, I don't want to know. Like, please don't tell me because I can't take any more.
Yeah.
And her daughter can clearly read that, and she's just like, hides the tape behind her back. She's like, yeah, he pushed me into that wall. Like, that's easier to deal with. She couldn't do that because she can obviously see that her family is already in a very bad place and people are
Mm-hmm.
barely holding it together as it is. If she did dob him in, there might not have been a coming back from that. So what she did was a very selfless act.
Mm-hmm.
She was being protective of her family in that moment. And I think that was also a very mature act for a child so young, which I actually think is very realistic because there are a lot of children who, when you're in conflict, you grow up a little bit faster. And that has certainly been my case. And you read things a little better. And so not all children act immature. Some can be very mature. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that reflected her and the life she's grown up into, that she goes, no, I know how to make the big girl decisions. And she made the right one there. And I like that she kind of got her brother to break down and do this silly thing of like trying to catch Santa Claus. And he may have done it originally just to try and get that tape back so he doesn't get into any trouble. But
Mm-hmm.
you can just see those soft moments where he's kind of remembering the good times they had, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of warming him back up. And it started with her, and then Santa did the rest. But I just thought that there were just a lot of really subtle acting choices where you could just read on the actor's face that, for me, just explained everything. And I thought that for them, that was just like, mwah, perfection.
Yeah. I feel like I'm appreciating the movie more now that you're kind of bringing some of these things to light. Like, I didn't
You're
think about it in that
welcome.
way. But yeah, that's a really good point. I really like that.
Thank you.
So we get the whole scene of them working together to try and catch Santa. And they actually catch Santa, which, like I said, when I first watched it, that was going to be a criticism. Like, this doesn't really make sense that they would be able to catch him. Now that I know that it was purposeful, I appreciate that a lot more. And you have them like chasing Santa. Like, that was another thing that I was like, why were they able to catch him? But you can clearly see that he's like super speeding across all these roofs. So yeah, that helps a lot.
I thought that they were a bit naive to think that they were so amazing to foil Santa.
Uh-huh.
Like, just that moment where they peek and they're just like, do you think he saw us? I'm like, he was literally looking in your direction. So, yes, I believe he saw you. And they're like, nah, he didn't see us. I'm like, you know the song, right? He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. The lyrics are right there. I'm like, yeah, this dude saw you. He knew everything. He's just also had some presents to deliver before he jumped back in the sleigh.
Yeah.
But I love that because I'm like, you really thought you caught Santa. Like, you're gullible.
There were moments where I was like questioning the level of Santa's omnipotence because he seemed to know everything about people. But he was tricked in quotation marks by these two little kids. So, yeah, the net with hindsight, I'm appreciating their buildup of this movie so much more. I will
glad
feel
that I
a
could
lot
provide this
better.
for you.
I will feel a lot better on the rewatch, and I will probably be noticing a lot more things. I feel like that's a hallmark of a good movie is like when you can see more things on the rewatch than you did the first time. You think that this is just going to be like a regular old Santa movie, but they've actually put a lot of thought into this, and I really appreciate that.
I totally agree. Even the title, I was like, why is this called Christmas Chronicles? And then I realized the title references more to the Pierce family than it does Santa Claus because it's their family, it's their Christmas Chronicles
Oh,
because they've
yeah.
been chronicling Christmas since, day died of the family. So I thought that that's really, like, we see Santa on the poster, but he's the selling point. But I feel like the title really refers more to the Pierce family.
That makes sense. I was thinking about the title and was like, that seems like such a weirdly generic title. Like they have come up with something better, but now that you mentioned the chronicling of the family, like with the video camera, that makes perfect sense. That makes a whole lot more sense than everything that I was trying to come up with to justify why they would call this the Christmas Chronicles. Yeah, that's great. You're bringing up things that I never thought of at all. That's so much more to appreciate about
it's a
it.
talent. It's a talent. It's what I do.
So you have them ending up in Santa's sleigh and taking off, and you're getting all these things that are kind of explaining how Santa does what he does. And he basically uses wormholes to travel around the world. And thus, has that ever been done before? Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Santa movies, so I haven't seen a ton of Santa movies. But I feel like that's a really creative twist on the story.
I'm trying to think of the films I've seen that have Santa Claus. So obviously the first thing I'm thinking of is the Santa Claus. And while he had magical flying reindeer and all that stuff, he really was just flying in a sleigh. There was no teleporting or anything like that.
Even though I never believed in Santa, I would always try and figure out how it would work if he was real. And the best thing that I could come up with was that he stopped time, because that would be like the only way he could get around the world in a single night. I just figured, like, if he were real, he would have to just stop time and then go.
Yeah. That's probably something I always thought, that, like, yeah, he just freezes time, and I'm just like, Mike, but what happens if you freeze the Earth in its rotation? Like, what happens if you do that? I'm like, did everything just kind of, will everything die? Will the Earth start to be destroyed? Like, my brain will go a little crazy on the theories there. So I'm so grateful that there's a film that, like, without any exposition, just shows us these little bits throughout that show us this is what Santa is able to do, and this is why he can do what he does. Even to the fact with the very last house, they're like, oh no, it doesn't have a chimney. He's like, that's all good. He's like, window.
Yeah.
And it's like magic teleporting. Like, seriously, like, he could have easily broken out of prison. It's just he didn't, because he was trying to make a point. So, and I'm like, did you kids learn nothing tonight? You seriously think he's deterred by a lack of a chimney? Have you been paying attention to anything that has happened in the last few hours? Like, okay, whatever.
So, up in the sleigh, I'm kind of wondering how surprised he was, but when you're watching the movie the first time, he seems like he's shocked and horrified that two little kids have stowed away, and it kind of sends everything into chaos. The bag is lost. His apparently magical hat is lost. The reindeer are lost. The sleigh turns into an airplane but still crashes. And they're basically stranded in Chicago, 1,000 miles from home, because I think they lived in Massachusetts or something. So they're very far from home. Either way, wherever they were, they said they were like 1,000 miles from home.
Yeah.
So he basically tells them that they're going to be on the naughty list for life. And they're kind of freaking out, and they want to help him, partly, I think, to get off the naughty list, but partly because what else are they supposed to do? They're stranded in Chicago.
I feel like Kate is very sincere in wanting to help Santa, and I think even Teddy, to a degree, has that kind of in the back of his mind mentality of like, what would my dad do? And so I think they're just like, they want to help because it's the right thing to do. I think Teddy is already, prior to that, he's like, oh, Santa's real. I'm so screwed. I just jacked a car. Like, I'm getting coal for Christmas this year. And yet he still does this good deed anyway. And yeah, I don't think it has anything, for him at least, to do with the naughty nice list. But I think in a way, Santa was a little bit surprised in the sleigh. Not so much that they were in the sleigh. He probably knew that. But he probably just didn't expect one of them to jump up at that moment. Like, you can still know somebody's there and they can still give you that moment of surprise. And he's like, oh, now you're deciding to announce yourself. Like, now was really not a good time. I'm driving. Do you not see this? I need to focus. He's also really good at catching kids from falling out of the sky. So that's
good.
I think my favorite I have many, but I think one of my favorite moments is when he lets Teddy fly the sleigh, and Teddy crashes through the billboard with Santa, and Santa turns around. He's like, "Ha ha! Take that, fat man!" Like, that was like his way of giving a screeze because he hated that poster. And I'm just like, he really loved that Teddy crashed into that thing just a little too much.
So after they crash in Chicago, this is where you get the scene with, I guess it's a bar, because Kate says something like she shouldn't be allowed there or something. I thought it was a restaurant.
I'd say it's a restaurant bar. There's like the one side that's the bar and the other side that's the restaurant.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. They're trying to get help, and there's this guy who apparently is a criminal, and Santa knows that this guy has stolen a car. So they end up stealing the stolen car. And they have a car chase. They're trying to find the reindeer. They send Kate after the reindeer and then lead the police away from Kate. They end up crashing the car. And this is where everybody gets separated because Santa gets arrested.
Well, Santa lets himself get arrested.
That's true, yes. I wasn't really expecting that to happen. I thought that as soon as Kate went after these reindeer, they were all gonna just ride the reindeer to freedom, but Santa got arrested, which led to
Bless.
some weirdly hilarious scenes in prison with Santa getting questioned and trying to convince this guy that he really is Santa by telling him that his ex-wife misses him too, and he's insinuating that they're going to get back together, which also makes me wonder, like, does Santa know the future?
I think that was more his just understanding two people and optimism, and he's not saying that they will, he's just saying that you can. He's like, but you have to do something about it. He's like, I'm saying she misses you too and you miss her, so all you got to do is talk to each other and you can work it out. So he sees the potential based on the fact that they obviously still love each other, and he's just trying to be like, although he did seem to know that the cop was going to get that phone call, and when he said, you may want to answer that phone. That's a little psychic, but that maybe that's less to do with foreseeing the future and being that he seems to know what is happening with everyone around the world at the same time. So he probably just knew at that time what she was doing. And so that's how he could say, your phone's about to ring, because he knew she was making the call. So that's my theory on that one.
That makes sense.
Does his brain switch off when he's sleeping, or does he see everybody even when he's asleep? Like, does Santa actually get any days off, really?
Who knows? I don't really know the limits of his powers, because
I feel a bit bad for him now.
I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but like later on in the movie, while he's still in jail, he starts pulling out instruments from nowhere, including a full-sized piano. And I'm like, what are the limits of Santa's powers? Like, I guess I could understand, like, when he pulled out the baseball card to try and get the guy to give him a car. That's a little thing. And he pulled out the little toys. That's a little thing. But a full-size piano?
Well, he can obviously make things materialize out of nowhere, like at the end when they're like, oh no, we didn't get anything for Mom, and he just kind of rubs his nose, and when they walk in, the house is completely decorated in Christmas. So he can make anything happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's more like he gives that look of pulling it out because it looks more appealing, whereas he could probably just like do this, a little flourish with his hand, and something would appear.
That is probably true. Because I was wondering where'd he pull the piano out from?
Yeah, I think Santa's just, I think we can tell, at least from that scene even alone, that Santa's a bit of a showman.
Yes.
And I think he was taking full advantage of that night because he's so accustomed to working in anonymity that I think he was enjoying getting to show off a little bit, which I think is really nice because, you know, why does Santa have to be humble all the time? He's doing some amazing stuff. Like, let him show off every now and then. He's got some talent. Let him have some fun. And so, yeah, I think he was getting, he was having just as much fun doing all the stuff that he got to do as the kids were. So, yeah, I think he was just like, this is the greatest Christmas ever. So it's like, did he take the tape at the end because he couldn't leave evidence that he existed? Or was it more of a selfish reason and he just really wanted to watch himself on tape? Like, which was it?
Now that you mention that, I bet it was that he wanted to watch it.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's like 50-50. Like, one, gotta keep my anonymity, but also, hey, honey, let's watch this amazing video.
So backing up to when Santa gets arrested, at that point he gives Teddy this thing. I'm still not sure what the thing was, because at first I thought it was the reindeer bells that he puts on the reindeer that supposedly makes the reindeer fly, even though I'm now realizing that that probably had nothing to do with that. But he also had this round glowing green gold orb thing that I don't know what it was, but apparently was to lead them. He said to the elves, but also I think to the presents, because that's where they went first. But then it turned out that the presents also were the portal to the elves, because when they find the presents,
the bag is a portal to the North Pole, which I actually really liked. It was
Me
really
too.
creative.
Makes sense how all those presents get in there.
Like when she crawls into the bag, and it's basically
Yeah.
like she's floating through a present dimension.
I think that looks so pretty. But yeah, no, when Santa crashes, he actually pulls out that thing and he does explain that it will either flash brighter or make more noise the closer you get to his bag of presents. So it's
Okay.
basically like a locator for his bag of presents. So that's why he grabbed it out of the sleigh so that they could track it.
Okay. Well, in here, when they're still looking for the presents, they wind up at a church. And this is where they start like coming back together as siblings because they hear a choir inside singing. I couldn't make out if they were singing like the O Tannenbaum version or the O Christmas Tree version, but I could tell that the tune was the O Christmas Tree tune. But like the beautiful hymn like choral version of it. And they talked about that being their dad's favorite song. And they talked about they hadn't been to church since he died. And he says that his dad would be so disappointed in him. And it's just a really nice moment of them coming back together. And he's apologizing for the things that he's done. And they make up. And I really liked that whole scene. It was really nice.
Yeah, I think there was only maybe one really corny piece of dialogue in there that I went, oh God. But of course you put that in there. But aside from everything else, I thought it was really quite beautiful. And it was good to see Teddy, let out more of his emotions and kind of process his grief in that moment, because it seemed like up until that moment he'd kind of been bottling it all up.
Mm-hmm. So after this, they end up finding the presents, and this is where Kate crawls in and ends up in the present dimension, and then later the North Pole. But they also, there's this gang that I'm not sure, like, where'd they come from? Apparently there was this gang just wandering through this park by the church. It's a weird place for a gang to hang out, but whatever.
Well, no, not really. If people have come to like midnight mass on Christmas Eve, then there would be a lot of unattended cars. So they were probably there to jack some cars.
I didn't even think about that. That's kind of dark, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, where are we going to find a lot of oh, look, there we go. And then, oh, look, there's a random kid that nobody is monitoring. Oh, he's got a really big bag of what is probably full of a lot of expensive things that we can, sell.
Mm-hmm. So basically, he ends up getting kidnapped. But meanwhile, she's in the North Pole following this little creature. I was like, what is this thing? I figured it was going to be the elf because, like I said, somebody online was talking about a weird CGI creature. I was like, what is this? This is not like the traditional Christmas elf.
I think also the pointed hat would have given it away.
Yes. But they have tails too, which is where I thought of like, this is like a chinchilla. It was
so
a weird
cute
design, but I liked it, how different it was than your average Christmas elf.
Yeah, I like it. Even their outfits are not, like they have a cute little hat, but they're not walking around with those little like elf shoes that have the curl on the end and then the bell to go with it. I'm like, they really stayed away from some things that were too cliche. And it's like, yeah, they're little animals, so they don't really need shoes, but maybe they just like to dress a little festive, because other than that, that's what they want. And good for them. Because, little clothes give them like personality, so that makes sense why they'd have it. But yeah, they were super fun and super frisky, and don't get on the bad side of these elves. They will whoop your butt.
So in the North Pole, she's kind of exploring this shop. She finds Santa's desk and she watches these video letters to Santa, which includes hers, that she had made earlier in the movie. She was asking for a skateboard, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And she also finds like a directory type place, like tons of little drawers that have like a record of all of the letters that have ever been written to Santa. And she finds a letter from Teddy, a recent letter, asking to see his dad again. And that was kind of weird, but I liked that they did that. Even though it seems kind of weird that a teenager would be writing to Santa, I liked that. And then what you said, like that being the thing to trigger this whole thing, that makes perfect sense. And I really like it even more now.
I don't even think he did it because he believed in Santa. It's just someone very desperately reaching out to anything and everything, like, because they don't know what else to do. You know, it's like, I just miss my dad and I can't talk to him. It's like, what do you do? Okay, I'm writing a letter to Santa. It's like, maybe it doesn't make sense to anybody else, but to that person in that moment. For them, it made sense. Like they had to do something. And for him, that's what he did.
Well, this point is when all the elves show up, and she says what apparently is a trigger word when she says he had told her that Christmas must endure. And they get out this book of true believers, which has her whole family in it, except for a blank space where, Teddy would be. And this is also where they start doing the floss dance.
Bless him.
It's still kind of, how do you do, fellow kids? But it was kind of cute.
I think they're adorable. I mean, hell, they could have been doing Russian dance moves and I still would have found it absolutely hilarious.
I would have loved it if they did Russian dancing.
I don't even remember what
that
I don't even remember what that specific dance is called, but it's when you crouch down, you have your arms folded and you kick one leg up at a time. But yeah, I'd love to have even seen them do something like that. Like, they were just having some fun and I'm just like, y'all are so cute. Like, yes.
So she tells them everything that's going on, and then they all make a plan, I guess, to get back and rescue Santa. And then you go back to where Teddy is, and the bad guys bring this bag to their boss, and they start opening the gifts, and they're all full of coal. So I'm wondering if Santa was just delivering a lot of coal, or if the gifts transform into whatever they need to be for whoever receives them.
Probably the latter. Yeah. There's probably like a default so nobody can like steal Santa's presents. It's like, oh, you've been bad, you automatically get coal. Sorry.
That's a good idea. It defaults to coal just in case.
Well, that's one way to deter people. But then again, these bad guys are not very smart because, coal can be made into diamonds. And they were just given a lot of coal. So with enough pressure, you can make diamonds, but they're all like, oh God, we're just getting coal. Let's toss this. I'm like, okay, throw away your potential for millions of dollars worth of diamonds, okay? I mean, uncut diamonds are far more expensive than the cut ones. I'm just saying. Could have made yourself some millions.
Or at the very least, they could have had a barbecue. But no, they decide they're just going to chuck the entire bag into the furnace. But Teddy still thinks that Kate is in the bag because, like, how is he supposed to know that there's a portal to a present dimension to the North Pole?
Well, that is still the portal. I mean, if you got rid of the bag, you get rid of the portal. But I imagine that that bag is obviously magical, so I don't even think fire would be a problem. But I think it was more, I believe that it was probably like magically fire retardant, but I think that the whole point is not to show that because it was about him like kind of leaping into the fire to save his sister in a way. So I thought focusing on that made more sense because it's about him.
Yeah, he freaks out, pulls it out, and they're about to kill him when a horde of elves leaps out of the bag and starts attacking the bad guys. I liked how they first thought that this one elf peeking out was cute, and then it like snarled and jumped out and freaked them all out.
Yeah, it kind of like growled and did something with its ears, and I'm like, now you look like one of those scary gremlins. And
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I like it. They're basically they're kind of like little animals. So it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, we can be cute and innocent. It's like, but sometimes some animals can be vicious if you pet them the wrong way.
Yeah. So once the bad guys are defeated, you go back to the jail, and Santa is finally convincing this guy that he's real, because this is the scene where his ex-wife calls him.
Mhm.
And one of the elves starts cutting its way into the cell and leaves him his hat, which up until this point, you think the hat is what gives him his magic. So the policeman lets him go free, but he just flies away, like he could have flown away at any point. And everybody is reunited outside, and they realize that there's not enough time to deliver the presents. So they convince, and I now realize that they were not convincing him of anything. This is his plan all along. They convince him to let them help. And they all work together to deliver the presents. And at some point, they only have like an hour left, or maybe it's one city left, and they have to call in the elves to help finish. And I was thinking, why didn't they just do that to begin with? But now looking back, that was the whole point. he planned this all.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, they realize that they have missed a child, because the one elf with his candy cane addiction had messed up the book, and a child's name was
Bless.
covered. And this scene was really cute, because he only has like 9 seconds to get into this house in Mexico City, and they don't make it in time, and he's caught, but he doesn't care that he's caught. The kid was
Well,
so cute.
Technically speaking, he could have been in and out before that
Yeah.
girl came down. He chose
Yeah.
to sit down, grab a cookie. He knew that he would be caught. I think he probably maybe has moments every now and then where he lets himself be seen to kind of maybe keep that myth or that spirit
Yeah.
alive, but he always disappears before that conversation can ever take place. But either way, he did it on time, and he could have been out of there with perfect timing, but he decided, ooh, cookie. He's like, well,
Mhm.
you know what? It's the end of my night. I've had a really rough night. I think I've earned one little cookie for today. And it's true. He did.
I just love the scene where the little girl came down, and I can't understand what she's saying, because even though I took 2 semesters of Spanish, I don't remember most of it. She's talking in Spanish, and you hear part of what she says is Papa Noel, and she's just so cute. And then she looks away and looks back, and he's gone. I really liked the scene.
I thought it was sweet. I love throughout the film Santa will speak people's native language, and nobody, like, even in that moment, nobody believes it's Santa. I'm like, really? He just bounced from Chinese to Arabic, or whichever Middle Eastern language he was talking. I don't know how to speak any of them myself. And then it's just like this one guy, and he's like responding in that language, and then he's like, he's like, and I speak English, you jerk. And I'm like, wow, that's the thanks he gets. I'm like, he was actually trying to be polite by speaking in your native tongue. Like, it was kind of his way of being like, I know you. And I'm like, yep, that is so modern day people, not seeing that it was a good gesture.
Yeah. So they get home before their mom gets home, and I think it's Kate asking, will we ever see you again? And he's like, not if I can help it. But he's like, but in the future, if I ever need 2 helpers, I know where to find the best I've ever had. And I love that the elves were like miffed about this. Like, what? The best you've ever had?
Bless him.
So he clarifies that the best human helpers.
And then they were very happy. They're like, aw.
And Santa gives Teddy his hat, and they mention that they forgot to give their mom a gift, but you realize later that when they said that, he basically magically decorated their entire house in a
That's
second.
why he touched his nose and the jingle sound
Yes.
happened, because he was magically making it happen.
Mm-hmm. And when he gives Teddy his hat, he says, "Don't you need it to fly?" And he says, "No, Teddy, I'm Santa Claus." So this whole night you could have and then I was like,
Yep.
that everything makes so much more sense now. He did all that stuff that I had a problem with on purpose. There was no inconsistencies. It was just him choosing to seem like he was bad at all this stuff.
Yep. I thought that was brilliant.
Yes.
Just made me love him more. And I'm like, and this is why he is my new favorite Santa.
Mm-hmm. And he flies away, and he does a ho ho ho, which he'd refused to do previously. And
because Kate pretty much begged him into it. Like, please,
yes.
please, please, no, please, no, please, no, fine.
And Kate is filming, but realizes once Santa is gone that the tape in the camera is also gone. So she has no proof. So their mom gets home and she finds them hugging, and they get inside and discover that everything is decorated just like their dad used to do. And they start opening presents, and they find gifts from Santa. Kate gets the skateboard she was asking for in the video previously. And Teddy gets a reply in the form of a letter saying that he doesn't really have the power to grant the wish to see his dad again, but he's given him a gift that's the best he could do. It seems like it's an old ornament, but when he hangs it up, his reflection turns into his father's reflection and says that he's proud of him, which is really all he wanted to begin with.
Just to tell his dad he was proud of him.
Yeah.
Which they kept interrupting. First it's, she's talking to her dad and he's like, I just wish I could see him one more time so I could tell him something. It's like, what would you going to tell him? Oh, look, we're interrupted. Oh, and then she's reading the letter and it's like, I just wish I could see him because I just want to tell him one thing. And oh, look, she's interrupted. And then we get to the end and yeah, he just says, I'm proud of you. So I thought that was very beautiful. And of course I'm every time I watch that I'm watching it through tears, but it's beautiful.
So that's the end of the story with them, but then you kind of get like a little not a post credit scene, but like epilogue, I guess. Back at the North Pole, Santa is writing Teddy's name into the Book of True Believers, and Mrs. Claus comes home, and she's talking to him, and for a while it's like you don't see who she is. You know it's Mrs. Claus, but it's not showing her face, it's not showing any part of her body. And then at some point she turns around and you realize it's Goldie Hawn, the real life spouse of Kurt Russell. Yep. Which was great. I did not expect that. I had no idea that she was in this movie. I was like, that is a really great little touch to have her come in and be Mrs. Claus.
I died. I was so excited. For 1 minute I'm going, Goldie Hawn! Oh my God! Like, it was the friggin' best moment of my life. And then I mentioned it to my brother and he's like, so? And I'm like, I thought you of all people would understand my excitement in this. And he didn't. I'm like, fine, be that way. I'll just be over here absolutely thrilled that Goldie Hawn is Mrs. Claus and her husband is playing Mr. Claus, but okay. God.
Yeah, when the scene first started, I was like, why are they filming it like this? Like, why are they filming everything from behind? Why aren't they showing her face? And then when she turned around, I was like, oh, okay. That was kind of a great little surprise reveal.
Love it.
And this is the scene where they're talking about watching a movie, and she's listing a few classic titles, but he says he has another movie in mind, and it shows he's holding the missing tape from Kate's recorder. So they're going to watch his exploits from the night before.
That's a home movie. That's a good home movie.
Yes.
I'd watch it. We did watch it technically.
Yes. And that's
Saying.
the end.
And I can't wait for the sequel, which comes out November 25th on
Yes.
Netflix. 8 days to go. I'm so excited.
And I didn't really think that I would be that excited, but now I'm like, I hope I have time the day it comes out. I'll see if I can watch it right as soon as I can. I'm really looking forward to the sequel now.
Yeah, I think the benefits of this film is that it's directed and co-written by Christopher Columbus, and he did Home Alone 1, he did Home Alone 2. So I feel like, and those are classic Christmas movies, and I feel like he was able to kind of bring a lot of that, that sense of timelessness and kind of Christmas spirit and magic. I think he really brought into this, and so that's why I think it has those qualities that I'm missing in a lot of modern Christmas movies, where I'm like, yeah, this is a really nice film, but do I feel like I want to watch it every Christmas? No. Whereas I definitely watch Home Alone 1 and 2 every freaking Christmas like clockwork. And now I've got this one, and funny enough, they're directed by the same person. So I think Christopher Columbus is really good at Christmas movies. I know some people were saying, does Harry Potter count as a Christmas movie, because they do celebrate Christmas in that movie? And that film was directed by Christopher Columbus. So he obviously just has a talent for Christmas stories, even if one of them is Harry Potter. He was very good at inserting that magical Christmasness into it. So I love this. This is definitely the only modern day Christmas film that I feel has now become a Christmas tradition for me, where I will watch it each Christmas, and I'll get the tissues ready. They will be ready, and I will cry. And now there is and now we have the sequel, which I'm very excited about. And the sequel is also directed by Chris Columbus. Actually, did he? No, sorry. Yeah, he produced the first one. He's directing the sequel. The first one was directed by Clay Cadence. But the fact that he is involved in the production, it just feels right. And I like that. Now that makes me even more hopeful for the sequel, because if he's directing it, then I'm happy. But
a lot of times you have the big name dropping off the sequel, leaving it for somebody else to do. You don't usually have them signing up for more work.
True. And I don't know, I never, like, I remember when I got to the end of the Christmas Chronicles, I'm like, oh man, I want a sequel. Never thought I'd get one. Here we are 2 years later, sequel time.
Well, whenever the sequel comes out, we will have to have you back, and we can talk about how well we think that they did. I have high hopes. I think they're going to do well.
I really hope so. Like I said, I feel optimistic with Christopher Columbus directing, but yeah, I don't want to be too optimistic, because sequels do tend to suck.
Yeah,
but
well,
fingers crossed for this one.
I feel like it has a lot of potential, and I feel like since Chris Columbus, I'm getting him mixed up with the Italian explorer. Chris Columbus, since he's signed on to be the director, I feel like that bodes well.
It's all short for the same thing.
Yeah. I feel like that bodes well. Hopefully.
Like I said, fingers crossed. I'm feeling optimistic, though. I am.
Well, I think that's probably all of our discussion on the Christmas Chronicles. Do you want to let people know where they can find you if they want more content from you?
Oh my goodness. You can find me everywhere except my house. Don't come to my house. That's off limits. I am on YouTube, the Movie Oracle. I'm on Twitter at @the_movie oracle, on Instagram at @the_movie oracle, or I'm just at the Movie Oracle on Facebook. I am everywhere. I'm hoping for one day to have reached the level of full omnipotence, but I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Work in progress.
Well, I will have links to those in the description for easy access. And I guess we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining me. This is a lot of fun.
Thanks again to Ashleigh for joining me on the podcast for these last 2 episodes. If you want more from her, I'll have her links in the description below. Hopefully we can have her back soon. I'm looking forward to talking about the Christmas Chronicles 2 now at some point. We're closing in on the end of the year soon, and while I normally take a break right after Christmas, I do still have a couple episodes in the works. I actually still have another Christmas Carol episode of every version ever that I'm working to get out soon. It probably won't make it by Christmas, but hopefully soon after. And then, depending on what my schedule looks like, I might try to get out at least one other episode here before the end of the year. Though it might end up being after New Year's, we'll see what happens. Either way, more content is coming soon, so stay tuned. We'll see you soon. Merry Christmas!